All right, Jessica, thank you for the question. This is a really awesome question. I'm really glad you asked. How about somebody with moderate muscle mass who feels tight but is highly flexible for their size and muscle mass? Just curious on your thoughts. So this is going to lead into when I finally collect all my thoughts for the last round of voting on muscle mass versus body fat for movement quality. Muscle mass isn't always going to be an indicator of movement quality, and really the first thing that we're going to look at is going to be the orientation of your bones. That's going to give us a deeper insight into what's happening at the muscles. And I go back to this posture in particular. It's not the only compensation or posture that is there, but I think it's easier to understand because a lot of people have tight hip flexors and tight hamstrings. And stretching them isn't necessarily going to be the answer to solving that issue. So let's talk about this. This is going to be like two levels, so hang in here. If I have an anterior orientation of the pelvis, somebody who tends to be a little bit more lordotic, and they feel tight in their hamstrings and their hip flexors, stretching them probably isn't going to fix the issue. Really what we need to do is reestablish a better stacked position so that both of those muscles can now have better leverage. And so I have a band here. I talked about this a couple weeks ago, but let's say your hamstring attaches to the back of your leg, and well, it's not long enough, but it would attach down here by your knee. So if I have this anterior orientation of the pelvis, my hamstring is going to be put in a stretched position, right? So it feels tight and it feels like I need to stretch it, but really what we need to do is recover the position so that now your hamstring can go through whatever range of motion needed for gait mechanics and lifting weights, whatever you're doing. Really, gait is a lot of what we're looking at here. If we look on the other side, if I have my hip flexors, and my pelvis tilts forward, now this would have been in a shortened position and this would feel tight, right? So it doesn't make sense to stretch both, and there are actually going to be other drills that we would do to help somebody learn how to get to a more stacked position. Why the rib cage is so important is that if there are compressive forces happening up here at the rib cage, it could be influencing what's going on at the pelvis and why it's being pushed forward, right? So that's kind of the first level of this. When we go to test somebody, especially somebody who's got a lot of mobility, somebody's like hypermobile, typically we're going to put them in a position where they're laying on their back. So if I have somebody who has that anterior orientation, I'm going to guess that they shouldn't be able to raise their leg up to 70 to 90 degrees because their hamstring is already in that stretched position, right? There are exceptions. There are people who are really mobile, dancers, gymnasts. Sometimes it's genetics, right? That people are still able to raise their leg all the way through. So we have other assessments that we use to give us a better understanding of where people are starting in their position. So I won't talk about those testing right now, but why you feel tight is probably because the orientation of where your bones are in space, not necessarily because of muscle mass, not necessarily because everything needs to be stretched. If anything, there's probably muscles that need to learn how to come to a shortened position and actually hold you up. So the big ones that we focus on early on in programming are the abs and the hamstrings. These two muscles are typically in this more lengthened position, and people are really putting these muscles into a stretch. It's not that they can't be strong there. It's just that it's going to influence a lot of stuff that's going on outward, right? Like whatever happens at the spine is just going to be exaggerated as you move outward down the joint. And so when we can restore the position here, like everything else starts to move better and you feel freer, and all of a sudden you don't feel so tight through hamstrings, hip flexors, if you can get to this better stacked position. And again, it's not just about what's happening at the pelvis. Like things that are going on at the rib cage are going to influence what's going on at the pelvis. And so I hope that makes sense. We see this a lot in people who are really hypermobile. They can get into all these positions, but they still feel tight. They really should address what's happening at their thorax and trying to get their joints in the best position possible so that their muscles now have better leverage to go through all the different ranges of motion and not being stuck, whether their hip flexors are stuck in a short position and they're trying to work, or their hamstrings are hanging on for dear life. I hope that makes sense. There are some other orientations we see with the pelvis, especially some asymmetrical stuff going on, where people like really trying to stretch in and out of their hips, but if you're in this orientation where you're more asymmetrical, that can also give you some issues of feeling tight in different places, and stretching probably isn't going to be enough to fix that. But what I'm excited is I'm not ready to release all the details yet, but I'm going to be offering a 6-week posture reset program for people who are interested, and not quite ready to release the details on it, but you guys have shown more interest in this stuff, which is really cool to me because it's something I'm really passionate about learning and sharing, and it's been a huge help for me in my own lifting, and a lot of my clients. I've seen some really amazing results with them. I've worked with a lot of elderly who really struggled 70s, 80s with being able to walk around and move, and even just struggling up a flight of stairs, and addressing these things like joint position was enough to give them better movement quality. We didn't have to put on a lot of muscle mass, and that's actually what I'm going to lead into with the next post, and appreciating, hey, what's up, Tasha? And appreciating that we can get a lot stronger, we can get really good positioning of our joints, and we don't necessarily have to put on a lot of muscle mass to do that, to get better movement quality. But I'll save that for another day. We had a lot of people vote for muscle mass, so I want to get my I's dotted and my T's crossed before I come out and ruffle some feathers. But I'll look forward to sharing that with you, hopefully this weekend. But again, Jessica, thank you for the question. If you guys have any other questions, I'm happy to address it. And hopefully that cleared it up. You can still be super hypermobile, but still feel tight, and a lot of it probably has to do with the orientation of your bones. So let's get those bones in a better stacked position, get them really strong there, so that we don't have to deal with these, whatever orientations of being like super forward or asymmetrical, whatever it is. Looking forward to giving you guys more info on that, and yeah, hope you're all having a good day. Have a good weekend. Take care. I'll see you soon.